If you're watching this video, I'm just going to assume that you're part of that passionate niche of the niche group of sim racers that love the immersion of being in VR. You might also just be someone who's thought about VR but still has reservations. It's possible you have no interest in VR at all. You maybe just stumbled across this video because of the YouTube algorithm. Either way, thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications to let that YouTube algorithm get back to work. So, full disclosure, this video is 100% just my opinion on which of the three simulators, rFactor 2, Assetto Corsa or Assetto Corsa Competizione, gives me that best sense of immersion when in VR. I'm not going to bore you with technical details. I'm not entirely sure what the technology involved is. I'm one of those consumers that is mostly focused on the output, not what's inside the shell. There are many other channels out there where you can get a more in-depth technical explanation. This is just a head-to-head test with my honest opinion on which game makes my jaw drop and which makes me think, meh. That said, I will detail my system specs and VR settings in the video description. For those of you that hate clickbait or long drawn out videos that don't give you the answer, well, not until the end, hashtag spoiler, the answer is Assetto Corsa. Now, you can hit that subscribe button in appreciation of a no beating around the bush answer, and maybe tickle the like button for the YouTube Algorithm Appreciation Society. So, for those that want to see and hear why it's Assetto Corsa, keep watching. So what do we want from VR? VR's USP is that you get to shut out the outside world, all visual and audio distractions that pull you out of the immersion of the game. It's not just about the visuals though, although they are of course critical. It's how being in the world of VR means your other senses are heightened too. Tactile, audio, all in sync with the visual presentation in VR. So when I compare the three titles, what I'm looking for is how well they satisfy those other senses, how they play a huge role in determining that overall VR experience. Let me show you, let me explain. I've selected the Ferrari 488 GT3 and the Silverstone GP circuit. The same time of day, and that's it. I'm not focused on a lap time or setting the car up. The objective is to see how the tactile, audio and visual come together. It's to see whether any of the three pull me out of that virtual world created by virtual reality. So here we are, rFactor 2, making our way down the Hamilton Straight. Now, the first thing about rFactor 2 that really annoys me when it comes to VR is the UI. To get the visuals in the mirror window to anything that looks good on a stream, I have to go with my native resolution of 4K. That means that the UI spreads to the four corners of the screen and I can't see it in VR. Not without looking down to the left, up to the right. It's just painful. It takes me out of that VR immersion. Now, I'm sure I could fix that by going into the ini file somewhere and changing some config. But I don't have the patience. I'd rather be on track. Now, when it comes to lighting, the lighting in rFactor 2 is quite good. I like the way that you get those speculative rays, how it dances across the dash. It's nice and bright, it's nice and cheery. When it's raining, it feels dreary. There are sometimes issues with lighting artifacts, but that's possibly down to the mods involved rather than the sim itself. The shadows work. I can't really turn them up to a level high enough to get rid of any of those broken, jagged edges. But shadows work. You go under a tree, it gets a little darker. Now, the colors do look a little artificial. Now, when we're talking about the actual vehicles, the cars and what's inside the cockpit, it looks good. But when you're looking out at the world, the sky, the grass, it does kind of look like, well, paint by numbers. It's a completely different story when you look at the car models and the skins when they're painted. Those colors really pop. Now, when we talk about the level of detail, you can look at the dashboard. You can see very clearly the digital display on that dash. I can read it. The lighting it works. The sounds in rFactor 2 really depend on the mod. They're not really anything to shout home about, but they sound good. Now, the force feedback in rFactor 2 is amazing. It's so tactile. It does an amazing job of overcoming, for the most part, any visual deficiencies or any audio that's lacking. Now, Assetto Corsa Competizione, the UI has the same problem that you have in rFactor 2. It goes to the four corners. However, I probably spent the time that I didn't spend in rFactor 2 to go into the config or to go online and find out what control I needed to tweak or what parameter I needed to change so that I could bring that view back in front of me. So it's okay, it works. The UI also conveys a lot of information. Now, the lighting in Assetto Corsa Competizione is okay. The shadows work. It doesn't look really too dissimilar to what I've got in rFactor 2. Now, I know it's a completely different story if you're playing on triples or single screen. You get the full fidelity of that Unreal Engine. What I'm talking about is what happens when you're in VR. Now, the shadows in Assetto Corsa Competizione, again, just like in rFactor 2, they work. I still have to really play around with the levels of detail to see how high I can get them to get rid of any jaggedness. But the level of detail, again, if we're talking about in a single screen environment, that 2D, it's amazing. However, when it comes to VR, maybe it's down to the different cars, the different dash. I can struggle to read the dashboard. If I'm in the Lamborghini, something about that green on black contrast on the dashboard makes it, well, indiscernible. I cannot read it. Where rFactor 2 really knocked it out of the park with force feedback to try and overcome its deficiencies, it's audio in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Some people do not like the reverb. They think it's OTT. But none of the other sims, maybe Assetto Corsa with the mods, can really touch ACC when it comes to that audio experience, which does bring the VR together. However, when you come to Assetto Corsa, the thing that stands out straight away because of the modding community is visually, it is stunning in VR. The lighting, the shadows, the depth, the colors, everything about it makes it a visual experience that makes you want to spend hours after hour in VR. The colors in VR really stand out. And again, that credit goes down to the modding community. When you look at it in 2D, it still looks a little, well, paint by numbers. But in VR, look, as we come around Love Field, there you go. I'm gonna shut up. Look how the light dances across the window, across the dashboard as it goes through the stanchions of the stands, and you get those individual shadows dancing across the windscreen. Neither of the other two sims do that. And the sound in Assetto Corsa, again, because of the modding community, really, it does compete with what you get in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Dependent on the mod, dependent on the sound file. Oh, look again, as we come through Maggots and Beckett's, just look at the lighting. It does such a great job of keeping you within that immersive reality. It does not break you through that fourth wall. Look as we come down the Hangar Straight. You could almost drive straight off at Stowe just by taking in the view. And this is why, along with the force feedback that you get in Assetto Corsa, which is as good to a degree as rFactor 2, and is definitely better than what you get in Assetto Corsa Competizione, it's just hands down the best VR experience that I have. And that's before we even talk about the UI. The UI in Assetto Corsa is brilliant, and that's why it's my choice.